So it's been a long time since I've shared any personal works aside from spontaneous poetry and, you know, maybe one-off pre-written poems. I really haven't showcased much of my published work on YouTube. And I think probably it's been more of an effort to want to encourage people to purchase it. I can't lie. I don't want to put too much of it out there, and I'm being a bit conservative in that way. But, I'm trying to keep a diverse, portfolio of content per se to share. And I don't want each video to feel redundant or, too similar to the last. That's what I love about my passions, is that they're so, versatile. And one day I may be sharing martial arts, and the next day I might be sharing something more thought-provoking, and then maybe switch to something like discussing plants. There's no real pattern because I don't want it to get boring, and I guess more so than anything, I don't want to get, bored with it. So this is my first work. I finished this in 2024, and I really haven't shared any of it, with the social media or public space. It's really special for me because unlike most of the things I've completed, it does, maintain a particular pattern. It is very consistent in terms of its structure. And, ironically, that kind of contrasts with my own, very dynamic personality. So I thought maybe I'd share a poem or two today. And, I'm not really gonna think about it too much. The first one I flipped to was called I Theorize. So that's the structure. Every page is like this. This is the alphabetical collection that I've written that is, very metaphorical and focused on different, almost, silly references that help you to ground the topic that's being, discussed. And I'm gonna go into detail about what this particular one is referring to, and maybe you can catch it if you're, somebody that's particularly keen in this area. But this is called Theorize. This is about the ability to, think about different outcomes and, be kind of lost in your mind. It's a gift, it's a grace, something that I've been very grateful for in my own life. So here we go. I theorize countless possibilities. The amount is nothing short of incomprehensibility. That is, extensive dissymmetry in the ultramity of life's benedictory. The delivery of such abstraction you might imagine is akin to witchery, as the perceived trickery in each Carmen refraction sparks a chain reaction of contradictory arcs of light. The mark of sight, consequently, permits the ideas of entry into the darkest abyss, whilst teasing masterful ascension, eventually leading to faster progression of disaster, acceptance. Contempt, then, is not an art of the substance. Apart from chance, circumstantial utterances and resentful tones, still no resentful bones in this body I hold. Honing in, attenuating man, it is told by generations, innervations from the pituitary, amygdala, both regen and represent. situational instances crossing great mental distance. So, a lot of these are very full of, vocabulary. It's hard to even define what type because they're different depending on each poem. This one, there's certain words that stand out. For example, incomprehensibility, altimetry, pituitary, amygdala, and then the last line, of course, situational instances crossing great mental distance. So what we're kind of, looking at here, at least from my point of view, is the ability to, think through these different situations and to have the capacity, that's the important thing, to be even able to, conceptualize it. Now, it doesn't always translate into something that's understandable. For the line, the delivery of such abstraction you might imagine is akin to witchery. So because it's so out there sometimes, what's in our minds, for others it seems like it's something that's, like magic, the connections that we can make, the ideas that we can produce. For certain individuals that can't really, wrap their minds around it, it does seem incomprehensible. And that is kind of something that creates imbalance maybe, and dissymmetry, that's another word that's mentioned. So the perceived trickery in each karmic refraction sparks a chain reaction of contradictory arcs of lights. So that's a good one too, because when your mind is trying to rationalize and wrap your head around what it is that you're thinking about, especially from another person's point of view, it's like the gears are turning, the lights are on, and then there's these chain reactions of, electrical signals, in the mind that are trying to spin and to produce an understanding. But it's kind of like a trick because it's so, you're almost there, but you're not quite there. And so you're feeling like, man. So that is what's so beautiful about this, the mark of sight consequently permits the ideas of entry. So the ability to kind of put yourself into the other person's shoes and see through their eyes, it is what it takes to begin to, enter their mind, so to speak, even in the darkest abyss, even when there's nothing else to grasp onto. Teasing masterful ascension, it's almost like it's that first premature, thought that, oh, I get what they're saying, when in reality that may not be the case. There's always more that could be grasped, and when you're at the gates of understanding, it's almost like you've just knocked. You haven't actually been let in. You haven't truly, received all it is that you could possibly understand. And eventually leading to faster progression of disaster acceptance, meaning that because at times we are naive enough to think that we do, fully understand the breadth of somebody else's experiences, or of a concept in general, the idea of disaster is something that is very familiar, because due to our arrogance or ignorance, we can kind of create a problem for ourselves where we're overconfident and we don't truly, know what it is that we think we know. And eventually that will lead to acceptance, where we're like, oh shit, I didn't actually, fully recognize whatever it is that I probably needed to prior to, building up that confidence. So then I kind of, described that contempt is not a part of this, just because maybe I feel that I am not able to be fully understood per se, or maybe somebody else might not feel that way. There is no resentment from that. A lot of it is circumstance. People are different and they can't always, see the world through each other's eyes. And so I don't feel that anything that I do should be done out of resentment, because ultimately I am unique, and, each person is unique. And so I try not to hold any of that. I try to let it go. So, this is something that's been taking place for many generations, and that's what the last stanza kind of, mentions, is that this is, somewhere deep in the brain, and this has been kind of almost regenerated. It's something that I mentioned, that it is changing, but it's like always kind of coming back, and it's always, reforming and reinterpreting itself and representing something. And a lot of it is situational, circumstantial, as I mentioned. So that is just one, poem that I think has a lot of weights, and it's called Theorize. I really enjoy the process of writing, and I think that it's taught me a lot about the world and a lot about myself. So while not all these ideas are fully formed, even, I probably wrote that 2 years ago, but there's still so much that goes into it that's almost, prevented me from ever, myself even having a full, profound understanding of it, because it's always evolving, it's always changing. And that resentment I mentioned, I also don't direct that at myself, because I don't blame myself for not always, comprehending my own nature and my own experiences, because a lot of them are just based off of, things that have happened and events that may or may not have, some sort of relation to one another. And I'm trying my best to make connections and to theorize what those possibilities could be. But I may oftentimes be wrong, or may be led to a different, conclusion about something that may not kind of coincide with the full depth of substance that is, beyond the gates that I've kind of implied. So it really is, a fascinating topic. It's something that you can really dive into. And this book is just a glimpse. Like, that is what I have really tried to offer myself and my friends and my, peers, is substance. It's not about being the most intellectual, the most, profound. It's just about, bringing ideas to the table that have deep consideration behind them, and always trying to minimize my arrogance, ignorance, and maximize my curiosity and pursuit of, information and knowledge. And it's been very fun. It's something I never thought that I would have pursued. It's not even anything that I was particularly good at when I was younger. And if anything, I was a weak writer and I was a weak communicator. So I've kind of really leaned into that, and just discovered a new way of expressing myself that I really can't understate how important it is to me now. It's become my bread and butter, where I once used to be incredibly reliant on more analytical and logical, references and frameworks, and I still am, but they have structure that doesn't always fill in the gaps. And I think that's where poetry can come in. Is it's not about creating any more, components per se. It's almost about just giving, the connections that are already there a bit more oomph, a bit more thickness, depth. And sometimes peeling back some layers, because even structurally, you have the macroscopic, the microscopic, and you of course have, what we would call, even past that, the forces unseen, and arguably they also have their own kind of structural components. They're just not as visible on any level, yet they persist. So yeah, if this is something that you want to pick up, I really encourage you, not just for my personal benefit, but it could be for your benefit too. This is a good book. I really stand by this. And I'm just so excited to continue to share more. It's also, it's a bit selfish, but I love the thought of having something that can exist past me. And maybe it's a bit of a, foolish, idea that I could have a legacy, but I can't deny that I do, in fact, want something. I want someone to, have a positive influence, when they read my work. And maybe 100 years from now, my book will be, in some bookshelf in a random place, and I'll be long gone. But the things that I considered back in 2020, whatever, will have, been preserved. And I'm excited about that. I can't deny, can't lie. So yeah, I got more coming soon. I really can't wait. I mean, it's just, a lot of it's building off of past events and, even the future, about what I'm hoping for and the life I'd like to try to live. And we'll see when it can come out. There's no rush, but a lot of it is dependent on my, financial circumstances and my, ability to just survive where I'm at, which is often pretty difficult. So, it all kind of comes together at the end, and, doing the best I can. So I can't really do much more than that, and try to keep anybody who's interested posted when the next one comes out. So yeah, I'll do another one of these soon, and maybe from my other book, Charcoal. But you can pick up both of these at the link in the bio. This is an original work by myself, available on Amazon for purchase. And if you want any special, you know, mentions or even poetry, I'm happy to write something. So if you're interested in that, you know, feel free to leave a comment about a poem that you'd like, and I'd be happy to write one and then, you know, share it live. You know, this is something I like to do, so it's not a burden or anything. So anyway, thanks for watching and take care until the next one.